Hi everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm betting some other folks are going to join us that have confirmed, but they're just running a little bit late. But I want to get started so that we can make our ride over to Kennedy. If you guys want to come to this table, that would be great.
All the fun
We'll all watch
stuff.
you.
Yeah, we'll all sit on the sides and stare at you. Some of your peers will join you hopefully in a minute. We've got some other folks that are supposed to come.
I guess I want to sit here.
Yeah, and I think most everybody has introduced themselves already, and we've met in the past, but just in case, I'm Mike Fleckenstein, and I'm the Chief Information Officer for the school district. So my responsibilities run really all of the technology, including telecommunications for the school district. So if it's a phone, a computer, a server, data, infrastructure security, all of that sort of stuff falls under my purview. And these folks you see on the side, this is the team that makes it all happen. And so these guys work for IT as well. We've got Andy Kloop. He is our Senior Director of Applications, Educational Technology, and webcoms now, that's right. We changed that this summer. So then we have Hassan Harrington. So he is our guru of field services. And what that means is that all the stuff out in the schools that kids and teachers are using, he's responsible for making sure that stuff works and stays up to date. And we're doing really good on one of those. They work. Up to date? No, not always. So we're getting there. Josh Ferris, right here, he is our supervisor for service desk and imaging. And so that means when anybody's having any sort of issue, they get a hold of Josh's team, and we help triage or escalate or get the issue resolved as quickly as possible. And then he works hand in hand with Hassan to make sure all the infrastructure out in the schools continues to work and has the newest version of software. That's where imaging comes into play. And all that means is those are the guys that set up the way for us to get software onto those machines in an efficient way. When you're talking about 30,000 plus machines, it's difficult to walk around and update them all, so you need to automate that, and that's where the imaging team comes in. Maria Shavlis in the back. She's responsible, and this is an area I didn't mention a minute ago, other than around data, but she is our records manager. Hi, welcome. Come on up. Yeah, no problem. She is our records manager, and so she handles archiving all of the records for the district and making sure that everything is done legally, disposed of the right way, archived the right way. She also handles federal impact for the district, so all of that aid that comes in. Part of her team does all of the quality checks around OASIS, which is how we get our funding from the state. So all of the data that we send off to actually get funding for all the students, her team's responsible for that. Jack Johnson. So Jack Johnson over on the right, and he is tech services. And so what that means is that if it's in the data center and it's got blinky lights, it's him. So it could be servers, network, all of that sort of stuff. He's got a pretty big job when it comes to that. And then we have Julia Melson. Julia Melson is our project management office supervisor. So all the big projects that we do, maybe we're upgrading our student information system or new ERP, which is enterprise resource planning, like HR, payroll, that sort of stuff, then her team would lead that using these folks as resources to actually get that done. So that's kind of the way that IT is broke up just a little bit. And if you want to, we can go, I guess I could have started there. This is what we're going to cover today. We already did the overview, so I'll give you a quick project update, and really this is about things that we have just completed, so that you get an idea of kind of what a year worth of scope looks like for us. And then we're going to ask you, that's what these sticky notes are for in front of you, what you're interested in, so that when we do the tour at Kennedy, we'll try to answer all of your questions as we go around the tour. So magic will happen after you write this stuff down on the way over to Kennedy. And we'll divide up because we're going to talk at each different station at Kennedy, and we'll have your sticky notes, and we'll hope to try to hit those at the right station so that we cover all your questions. And if we don't know the answer to your question, we will find the answer to your question and get back to you with that. So with that, when I do this update, you may want to grab your stickies because I might trigger something where you go, oh yeah, I'm interested in that. All right, you can go to the next slide. So student refresh, this was a project that we did last year. The board allotted about $1 million for Chromebooks for students. And so in the past, this would have meant less than 1,000 devices if we would have been using the old methodology, which is buy a Mac or buy a PC. So those run between $900 and $1,100, depending on what you get. With Chromebooks, at $200 and some a device, we were able to do 3,570 devices. So when you get to Kennedy, you'll see we're staging some Chromebooks right now, so you'll get an idea of sort of what that scale feels like as we work through one of those rollouts. Next one. And then we also did staff refresh. This one actually is our most difficult refresh that we do, because staff members have a lot of data. And so every one of those, 4,192, and we did this through a lease. So the school board allowed us to take out a lease on these devices. We'll pay for that lease over the next 4 years. And we got that lease at less than or right at 1%. So it was a great lease rate for us. It's a vehicle we want to use moving forward with student devices. And so, but doing these 4,192, we had to work with each teacher and have them transfer that data over. Really cool thing is Josh's team, one of the guys on his team took the lead from something IBM did a while ago when they had to do a huge rollout. And we created an automated way where teachers could go in with their old laptop and their new laptop and transfer all of that data, configure it, get it running without us. And that worked for about, what, 85, 90% maybe?
I think we were like 84.
Yeah, 84%. So that meant we only had to touch about 16% of them. So new methodology worked a whole lot better. And it got the devices to staff quicker. We can go over to the next one. Wireless replacement. So all of these devices you see in the ceiling, there's got to be one here, over there, provide the wireless coverage for our schools. And we went in and replaced every one of those devices last year in every classroom or every teaching space. And we added miles and miles of cable to support that. Not all of our classrooms had wireless coverage before last year. About 3 of every 4 did. And now all of them have all of the teaching spaces, including places we might put students for transient periods of times, like multi-purpose rooms, that sort of thing, all have great wireless coverage now. Thank you, Jack. And PMO. Zangle to Q transition. So we upgraded our student information system. You're hearing a little bit about this right now if you're watching the news and that sort of thing. Zangle Q is Zangle. It's the same company. It's just a different name for the same product. This product, this is the new iteration of that product. So it's a pretty exponential leap from the old one. It's not exactly the same, but it is the same company. And so that is a 2-year project. So we've been working on it for over a year now. Many other places have gone live, but teachers are really going live right now. Parents and students on both Student Connect and Parent Connect, if you're familiar with that, are going live over the next month. So you'll see some of that as well. Information systems, our website. So not only our website, we're calling it information systems because it's more than a website. We're launching an app this year to help communicate with both parents and students. And we're replacing the infrastructure for our public website to be much more mobile friendly and much more sort of focused on what our customers want. So we did a bunch of data looking to see what people actually use on our website. And we know that our customers are usually either parents, students, current employees, or people looking to be employed. And so really those are kind of the 4 things that, that really use our website. And so we're focusing this new design, this new version on scaled down, mobile, focused on the things that most people are looking for when they come to us. And with that, the nice thing about this is going to be great for schools. Right now it's difficult for schools to keep their infrastructure or their data up to date. This will be really easy. Now if they want to make a post, they can make a post and have it go to the website, to the mobile app, to Facebook, to Twitter, all of those things as a single push instead of having to do all of that individually. And so that should make information coming from the schools a lot better. Next, VoIP conversion. This is happening now, so this isn't completely done. All the planning happened last year. So every phone that is around the district, and I don't see an old one here. Oh, there's one in the back. They're over 30 years old. And so all of those are coming out, and we're putting in what's called voice over IP. So those are phones that actually work on our network instead of on the old telephone network that exists. The nice thing about this is that it's going to save us $2.50 a line. Usually when people convert from the old telephone infrastructure to the new, it actually costs them more. But we've got a great partner with ACS, and we were able to negotiate that down to where we're actually going to save $2.50 a line every month as opposed to paying more. So, and get new phones. So that's great.
That is a question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you buying the phones from ACS?
No, so they will just provide the phones for us and then reduce the line cost that we're currently paying. So there's no capital investment. Next, ERP overhaul. So ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, which is that HR payroll system that I was talking about. I don't know if I want to draw this comparison, but for the community, you've heard about SAP, right? This is SAP for the district, but not SAP. Different platform. So we re-implemented our system on the most brand new version. We started in October last year. We went live July 1. It's all up and running. We've made it through all of our first payrolls, and so things are looking great there. And what this did was allow us to take advantage of some of the new things that come with our software. Jim Anderson in the back. Now, after this year, we'll be able to take advantage of some analytics that come with our finance system so that he can do more predictive analysis around the budget, how we're spending our money, where things are going. So this is really going to bring us to the sort of the forefront on data from our finance system. Oh, sure. Yeah, so in the past, our system, when we first implemented it in 1997, it didn't have the ability because of the way that our taxes work, and we have multiple bargaining units from a union standpoint. We have different benefits that happen in each of those. Didn't allow for you to have to work part-time in one of those bargaining units and part-time in another one. Couldn't do those calculations. And so what happened is we made you look like two people. And so there was Andy 1 and Andy 2 in our system. The problem with that, because there's no unique identifier for you anymore, is that all these other systems that we flow data into really require a unique identifier. And so because of that, we couldn't do really cool analytics with Jen's group. Now, this new version, you look like one person with multiple jobs. Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of project out what you're saying then that means that at one point it may have looked like a much larger staff for ASD than what it was. If somebody were to ask, so how many employees do you have, that may have been...
No, we just had to do a lot of magic in the background to make that accurate, right?
So you did have that accurate in the past?
Yes.
Because I had heard that actually when we were giving some numbers, we may have had fewer employees than what we were reporting.
Now, I don't know about the individual instances of things. There are sometimes where people make mistakes and
Okay.
wrong data is released, but all of the things that you know about it, Jim?
Right. So, in some of the reports that came out, it showed the total number of people on ASD's payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And then other reports would come out and it would show full-time equivalents.
Correct.
So if you have 200 cafeteria workers who only work 4 hours a day, then that equals about 100 full-time equivalent people. So that disconnect will continue.
Yes.
Because you're still going to have more people technically on the payroll
Yeah.
than as a
Uh-huh.
full-time.
No, it was more about teachers who had addendum and other things they were doing in other areas aside from just teaching. And so the numbers then and the percentages got put off, or were off-putting. And my understanding from board members, and maybe this was just their misunderstanding, was that was going to get fixed with this new overhaul. And
So what this really allows us to do, though, is to tell you what a total cost for a person is.
Okay.
Like right now, we would filter out those things and we would make choices. We would say things like, because we do a lot of driving other systems from this system. So for instance, if you're a teacher, we don't provision an account for you and give you access to the things you need to do in other systems for teaching. We know you're a teacher in this system, so we auto-provision all of that stuff, right? So we know that you need access to kids that are on your schedule, and we give you access to kids that are on your schedule. But what if you were a teacher and make it up, a noon duty, right? And the noon duty needed some sort of of access. And then how do we make those choices? How do we determine that we're going to give you the new duty set or the teacher set, or do you get both? If they're at different buildings, do you have access to both buildings? You know, all of those sorts of things. And so this makes that a whole lot more simple, because oftentimes what we would do is we would default to the higher level, right, instead of what is really accurate. Additional project updates. All of these were sort of, I won't say smaller projects, but different projects that we did last year as well. And so we updated 7,000 operating systems during the summer. That's the upper left. You've all heard about the data dashboard. We launched that. And then we also updated it. We've added 3 or 4 different new views since it actually went live in October or November of last year. We doubled the bandwidth for the district. So as we renegotiated our new contract with ACS, we doubled the bandwidth at less money.
For less money overall or less money per band?
Less money per unit, right? So our budget is still the same for that, but we've doubled the amount of capacity that we have. We'd love to double that one more time. So we're gonna work on that this next round. I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to Kennedy. We went with the Muni and are using their Clean Pilot for all of our risk management stuff. So we didn't have to re-implement a new system there. That saved us about $350,000 on that system, and is a shared service with the Muni. And then security. So we did a large security project this last year for data infrastructure. It's still ongoing. Security is one of those things that you have to be vigilant or sort of diligent about, and is always changing. So security is actually a topic every week on our staff meeting. We talk about it every week because it changes so fast. And we have to stay at least up to pace, as much up to pace with it as we can. And I think is that the end of this deck? All right. Lastly, in front of you, you'll see all of these sticky notes. If there are things you want to know about as we go through the tour, just write them down, and we'll get those from you in just a minute. We'll give you maybe 5 minutes to do that, if you would, and then we'll make our way to the bus. Tom, would you like to say something about that while they're
Yeah, very quickly. My name is Tom Roth. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. We're going to take an AC bus from here. We're going to go over to Kennedy. During the bus ride, I'm going to ask folks if you would provide me with a picture identification and driver's license as an example. We'll go to the gate. We'll present those to the guards at the gate. Should be very quick, seamless check. We'll go from there straight to Kennedy. We'll hand ID cards back. And you won't have to stay forever, I trust you. Keep it here, so thanks.
And if you want to ask any clarifying questions now that help you with this, just let me know. And when you're done writing, Julia or Marie or Josh or any of these folks can grab those from you, and we will organize them on the way over to Kennedy so that we can hopefully address them at the right station. All right, welcome to the Kennedy Data Center, and as you'll notice, this is an old elementary school. And so back in the day, before the base reduced some of the number of kids that were on base, this was used as an elementary school. And then for a while, we gave it back to the base to use, and they used it as a daycare center and a place for fitness and a couple of other things. And then as we were looking for a new data center, and we were in talks with both the Muni and the state to try to combine and use a data center, this property became available to us. It's high security because it's out on base, which is nice, and was a whole lot cheaper. And so we decided to use this building instead of go that other direction. And you'll see that what we ended up doing was kind of making this a building within the building. So where you see folks sitting at these cubicles and we talk today, that's just like a school. We actually treat ourselves the same way. We have the same network infrastructure. We have the same permissions, all of that. So we sort of eat our own dog food, if you will, when we're working every day. And then the data center is completely separate infrastructure. So all separate power, all separate data, all separate fire systems, all of those sorts of things. Earthquake proof, that. So there's a big difference between what we call Kennedy, which is where people work, and the data center, which is where all of our data and computing power lives. So I'll show you all of that as we get through the tour. So I did just a little bit of intro earlier. and gave you guys sort of what the different areas do. This is just a physical representation, well, a virtual representation of that on the screen. In case we forgot names, everybody should have a badge except for me because I lost mine somewhere. So, but this is the areas of responsibility. And then these are the stations that we're going to go through today. So I'll prep you for those just a little bit. The first one is what we call the IT Staging Center. It's really the IT Transfer Center. We called it the Staging Center here because everybody's like, Transfer Center? Isn't that where they take the trash? So anyways, we changed the name just a little bit. This is where all the computers in the district come through, and we do all of our imaging and that sort of thing. As we go around to these stations, each of these different supervisors are actually going to be talking about their area of responsibility. And they'll try to keep me quiet, but I'm going to probably talk some too. Station 2 is equipment repair. So this is where we actually do physical equipment repair. So when things break, then we try to fix them here in the district. It's much cheaper than sending them out to get fixed. So this means everything from, soldering boards to fixing laminators, that sort of stuff. Jack Johnson will talk about that when we get to there. Service desk. This is where we try to route all of our trouble tickets or change requests, and I'll talk a little bit about the differences between those as we go through. Everything kind of comes through the service desk no matter how you have an issue, whether you fill out a web form, you send us an email, you pick up the phone and call. These are the folks that are going to actually route that and make sure it gets to the right place, escalate it when we've started to break our timelines that we promised to folks, so that we stay up on the problem and delivering the solution that we said we're going to deliver. So that's the service desk. And they work hand in hand with every other department in here to make sure that we provide seamless customer service. Next is networking. So we'll head down to networking, and this is actually a pretty small group for what is one of the largest networks other than carrier networks like ACS and GCI in the state. So we run a huge network. Jack will give you some fun facts about that. We argued over whether or not we were going to talk about Austin or Stockholm today as far as distances go. Applications and data. This is usually what people really consume, or the thing that they see providing value to them. So it's your email client. It's your payroll client. It is your data dashboard. All of those sort of front-end pieces that use all of these services, this is the group that maintains all of that. So that's Andy Kloop's group. And so he really sort of cuts across concerns from a data center perspective. Then the data center itself. So we'll go into the data center. It's fairly loud in there because of the cooling, but we'll go in. You'll get to walk down the cold aisle. You'll see how we design this so that we're not air conditioning more than we have to air condition, even in the same room, because it gets expensive. You'll get to see how these work from an earthquake perspective, how we've designed everything for fire, all of that. So it's really kind of interesting. And then resiliency. You'll get to see how we've designed this with multiple power inputs, multiple data inputs. I don't know if you guys remember AMP before, and when we were in AMP testing, and then it just died the last year, and it was because a backhoe hit their data center. That was a poorly designed data center. So we have multiple points of egress into the data center for our data, so we'd have to have a lot of backhoes to cause us any issues. So we'll talk a little bit about resiliency. And then we'll come back here and we'll continue the slideshow. We've got some stuff on projects, how we get those, how we get our work from the district. So if that's good for you guys, we'll go ahead and start with station number 1.
Good snacks.
Feel free to grab something to drink and some snacks. There's coffee, water, that sort of thing. And as you're doing that, then I'll start to wrap up just a little bit, ramble some, and then I'll turn it over to Julia. A couple minutes here. All right. So I took over this position how many years ago now? Maybe 4 years ago now, something like that. I've been at the district for about 19, and I took this position about 4 years ago. And one of the things that was sort of my big charge as I came in is that I didn't want it to be IT in the district. I wanted us to be an embedded partner with everyone in the district. And so our job is instruction, right? So IT's job isn't maintaining technology. IC's job is instruction. What are we doing to add value in the classroom? If we're not thinking in those terms, then we're making the wrong decisions, right? There are times that we think in terms of dollars, there's times that we think in terms of that, but at the end of the day, all of those things translate or should translate to the classroom. If we're not thinking about that, then we're just not going the right direction. And that was a huge shift for IT. Back in the day, we were business oriented. We took care of the business systems, the business side of the house, and that was it. Instruction was on their own. Made no sense to me whatsoever. So we have sort of changed that whole model over the last 4 years, where now we're instruction first. And then we're embedded with all of these different groups. So if we're getting new curriculum, then there's somebody from our team on the curriculum team that's looking at that to try to help make good decisions about what are we buying and what are we doing. I have become an educator. At least I feel like I've become an educator. I don't have a degree in education. I have taught, but I don't have a degree in education. But now I feel like I'm connected to that because I spend a lot of time in meetings with folks where we're talking about education. We're not talking about technology. So I really feel like we've become a full partner, not only to our students, but the rest of the district. Other than that, the other big thing I really wanted to do was to change our image. And so when I came into this position, again, mostly business, but our image was one of no, right? And that was sort of a traditional IT. You hear about that all over the place. You know, IT's the roadblock. IT's the guys that are going to keep you from doing things. To yes, and right. So we don't say no to things. We say, how do we solve that problem now? And so we might not solve it with the exact way the request is, but we're still going to solve the problem. And so all of our folks know that we're not going to be the shop that says no. We're going to be the shop that says we're going to enable this, whatever that is, as long as it's good for instruction. And how do we get our work? So this is one that a lot of our own departments ask us all the time, because they want to get something done, and they want to know, when am I going to be able to get it done, and who's going to pay for it, and how's that all going to work? Because everyone knows in the news you hear about expensive IT projects, and so, you know, where's all that coming from? We really get our work in 3 ways. One of them is a forced upgrade, right? So something happens, we have a piece of software, somebody buys that company and says, we're not going to use that anymore, it's gone, you got a year to get off of it. Or somebody says, we're no longer going to update that piece of software anymore, you need to move to the new one. Q and Zangle is a great example of that. Zangle no longer exists. Q is the new version of that. You have to move to it. You can't stay on it forever. So that's one way that we get our work. Another way is what's called the IT governance process. So the IT governance process is for large projects. Things that are going to cost a lot of money, things that are going to impact a lot of people. So there's a litmus test that we look at and we say, how many people is this going to impact? How much is it going to cost? What value does it bring to the district? So before we even look at implementing one of those large projects, our PMO office sits down with the customer and we spell that out. What's this going to cost at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? What's this going to do for the district? How many people are going to be impacted? What's your plan for training? What's your plan for getting this thing out? Just a basic check. Then what happens with that is that goes to the chiefs. So we have a group of chiefs and deputy superintendent that sit on a panel, and those groups get to come pitch their idea. And they talk about it, and they talk about what's going to be good for the district, how much it costs, where the money's coming from, that sort of thing. And we look at the resources that are available to implement that, whether it be internal resources or if we're hiring a contractor to do those things. And then that panel votes, and that's how we get our work, our big projects. When we're actually deciding and making those, sort of looking at different pieces of technology, then we bring in like much wider groups of people. So we look at, hey, if we're doing, for instance, the communication piece, we talk with parents, we talk with principals, we talk with teachers. Let them look at all the different options that might happen. So where the ITG might say, we need a new website, then implementation committee is going to go find the technology for that, and that's where we engage a whole bunch of folks. So we know we're going to get a new website, we don't know what the technology looks like, we know about what it's probably going to cost, and then the real work starts once it's approved. And then sort of the third way is what I like to call projects of opportunity. These big projects take time. So if you're going to go out to RFP, you might as well know you got 6 months you got to tack onto that, because you got to write the RFP, you got to get it through, you got to have people respond, you got to give them 30 days to respond. There's all of this stuff you have to do when you're doing a public competition. These projects of opportunity tend to be smaller things, but have large impact. So Mark might come to our team and say, hey, you know, I'm having this issue. I really want to get data to my principals that's about this. Cool. We'll take a small team, 2 or 3 people, we'll brainstorm it, throw it up on a whiteboard, and then we're off and running. And that might take 2 weeks to do it. It might take a month to do it. It might take 2 days to do. But now we just added a whole bunch of value really quickly to the district. And so that's really sort of the 3 ways that we do work. We're at about 3:18. We've got about 10 minutes before we need to get you back on the bus. And so with that, I want to turn this over to Julia, who is our project manager supervisor, or project management supervisor. And she's going to run through quickly one of those large project life cycles, so you can just kind of see the planning and sort of the things that we do with that.
So I just wanted to give you kind of a visual idea as to how we move through a project within ASD. So for those of you who might be more familiar with project management, we do follow the Project Management Institute's methodology. So we start the project, we plan the work, we go ahead and we do that work, and then we close it out. But maintaining that project throughout. So is the work actually getting done? Do we have processes in place and supports in place to actually resolve issues? The next is what we kind of focus on. There are many different what we call knowledge areas in project management, but these are really those key components for us. So again, scope. What is it that we're actually set out to do? And then time, how long is it going to take us? What is the schedule that's involved? And then cost, where we really build out our budget and then track any invoices and purchasing that goes along the way. Quality is a huge one for us in ASD. So as you know, we work with many staff members. We collaborate all the time. It's actually one of the best things about my job is that I get to work with every department, all the schools within the district. But if you don't communicate, which is a huge one for us, or train or provide support resources, test your system adequately, which is so critical. And when I say that, I don't just mean with the programmers on the what we call the back end side of the system. We actually bring in the staff who are going to be using the system. We have committees and workshops come in and actually sit down, vet the system with us so we can ensure that it's going to meet their needs and their daily work life. So they're not going to lose functionality when we move them over to this new system. And then also process documentation, ensuring that we actually document a workflow or a process that is going to be the most efficient for whichever group of staff or users who is now going to be working with this new system. So those quality components are really critical for us to make sure that we incorporate those into every piece. So Mike touched a lot on the ITG process. So again, that's the IT governing board in our initial request. This is a snippet of that form. But one other thing that I wanted to add to what Mike already talked about, another really critical role of ours in PMO is making sure that the work we adopt and take on really aligns with ASD's goals. We really want to make sure that it ties back to all of those things that we're set out to do at the district level. And then this is just a list of deliverables that you can expect from us when we work on projects. So again, it goes back to what's the schedule, the task tracking, the training and support plans, all of those various pieces of documentation and resources, and making sure we have those in place. So one of the things that I wanted to do, I'll come over to this side, is show you an example. And I used Q and Gradebook. And the reason for that is Mike has talked a lot about our student information system upgrade, but This is a phased rollout. So we have phases of what we call modules. So essentially there's a module for enrollment, so how we enroll kids. There's a module for gradebook, for health. So there are so many modules and our timeline gets so large, I wanted to give you one module example and use gradebook since that's one that we did recently. But you can see we start with communicating to leadership. We engage the unions, which in this case was the teacher and the principals unions early on. We notify our principals. Then we start working on the system and testing. We bring in those committees and the workshops. We do our PR plan where we're actually doing big pushes with posters and flyers, electronic notifications and whatnot. We prepare our training and support materials. We actually go live with the system and provide training. One of the things that we like to offer is what we call just-in-time training, and that's something that professional learning has really seen as being a huge benefit for our staff. So they're not trying to learn it in the spring, have a summer off, and then are learning it in the fall. So then, of course, we monitor and support issues, and we continue providing training as it is requested. So the last thing here I wanted to show you is a snapshot of what is Support Central. So Support Central is an online resource that staff can go to access those short videos that we were talking about earlier. So a short task-based video. So if I'm a teacher and I want to know how to enter grades, I don't have to sit through 20 minutes worth of video to get that one piece of information. I can get it right there. So that's something that teachers have really found to be beneficial. In addition to user guides, we even have a blog there that IT can add to as well. So that also has been extremely helpful. And then this is just a high-level look at the current projects we're working on. As you can see, we have 10 currently, and a bunch of those are getting ready to be closed out, and we have our next meeting in a couple weeks to see what the next round of projects for us is going to be. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mike.
All right.
You can ask questions.
So I hope this has been somewhat informative, or at least gave you a little bit of an overview of what we do at IT and how we really want to be a part of the district and the district's core mission. So with that, if there are any other questions that we haven't hit sort of it, I'd love to answer them.
As far as the Blackboard, like each school being able to update their own website, when will that be available, and what training is planned for them to be able to do that?
Yeah, so that will be a phased rollout as well, like Julie was just talking about. And so our first goal around Blackboard is to replace the main district website, and then we'll start pushing it down to school sites, and then finally at the end all the way down to the teacher. And so really it's phased. It's in planning right now, and so all of those dates are not set in stone yet. We hope to have the main website converted this year, and then and start that work for schools as well. Do you have any other? Is that pretty accurate?
And they'll be able to
I'm just making sure I'm being honest.
Yeah, but they'll be able to update the calendar and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything will be, there's an integration in the Blackboard products. Maybe you want to just...
Yeah, so one of the nice things about it, once we're sort of fully engaged, is that all of those products, whether it be the app, the actual website, or a school site, or the public site, they're all integrated. We can push content from one to the other. So the district has a great story that they want to have on each of the school pages too, that can be available, can also roll up the other way. So there's just a lot of different options. And the nice thing about it is that you don't have to be a coder to make it work. And so a front office staff will be able to handle those updates. And so along with rolling that out, then you should see all of those sites become a lot more dynamic with more current information, because right now it's kind of a pain. Mm-hmm.
We have a prototype of the app, but I don't know that you want to take a look at it. It's not really live yet, but we we do have and
This
so
is the mobile app?
Yeah.
Yes. So everything is coming close.
Yes.
We're really excited.
We're reviewing designs right now, and hopefully those will be approved in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be moving forward. So yeah, pretty quick. Yeah. Any other questions for us? Anybody on the team? If you have any questions, feel free. All of our emails and contacts are on the main website. We will call, talk with you, take emails and answer those, anything that you like. And so there are items that we missed. Our goal is to take this information and then archive it so that it's available along with our notes so that you have those as well.
Yeah, and that'll all be posted with the agenda and on Fort Leadership Academy.
Yeah.
So answers to the questions that we didn't get to will go on that same
Yes,
page.
I believe so. The questions and the answers, Kathy, is that accurate?
I think so, love the answers.
I think we've covered most of them. Are there questions that you guys asked that we haven't covered that you want to know right now?
No, I can wait.
We've got a couple of minutes if you want to. It might be useful for the group. Did you have?
Andy had a whole sheet
Andy?
of.
Andy?
Andy got most of the
Andy?
sticky notes. I only got a couple, so.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of it, it was around the info systems. Lots of people have questions about that. So if we haven't answered any of those questions. I know there's a lot of questions about technologies for connecting with parents. I shared a little bit about that. But that was actually really a big part of the catalyst for what we're doing, is that we want it to be multi-channel. So one of the things we talk about is that especially our younger parents, a website isn't necessarily their first place to go. And so what we're looking, though, is that other industries, they focus more on their content creation and then think about multiple channels of delivery. So what we're doing is we're laying the groundwork that communications and others are creating high-quality content, and then we're putting that through the multiple channels that ultimately make it back to the website, or it may just be enough that it's in Facebook and so they know it's available. But doing that so that it's like one stop, right? Like, we don't want a principal to have to be like, oh, I've got this great thing coming up, and oh, I got to post it on the website. Oh, shoot, I forgot to send out my mass messaging. And oh, yeah, I got to do it on Twitter. Oh, and Instagram. Oh, and Facebook. Oh, and because they're busy people, right? Like, and so when they can just go to one spot, they do their initial post. They have the option to make tweaks to that. And working with our communication specialist Heather, who's a social media guru, she can help. She gives them tips on how to make a message better or worse for like a Twitter or Facebook post. They can do all those little quick tweaks and then hit one button, and boom, it's every one of their platforms at one time. So it's pretty exciting to give those tools to our staff, because a lot of them, they want to do those things, but they just don't know how they're supposed to manage it. And so we're actually giving them a tool that could do that. And then that way you've got one parent who's really into the text message, you've got another who's on Instagram or on Facebook 24/7, so that when a school post comes up, they're just instantly on it. And so, and then those platforms in and of themselves are often the ways that you can have more parental engagement, right? It gives us opportunities to push out other things. So we just kind of get excited about all of that. It's like we're finally joined in 2015. So, yeah.
So I had a question around something called My School Anywhere. Is that what you are referring to or not?
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so through ASD, I believe, are you familiar with My School Anywhere?
Never heard of it.
They must have picked it up on their own. So another school in Anchorage, the one that's right next to the
It's not unheard of.
Central Middle School, the one right next to
Roman?
Castro. Yeah, so they started something called My School Anywhere, which is an app, must be similar to what you were talking about. Anyhow, they're now using it just as a startup at Stellar.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal, and that's why I was trying to ask you that question. Is this the beginning of that? What it's doing is not just doing what you're saying, but it's also connecting parents to parents. So in a click of a button, you can say, yeah, sure, sign me up for the, I'll be on the directory list.
Yeah,
And suddenly
thanks for the
that
heads up.
directory's-
Thanks for the heads up. We'll check that out.
I mean, there's a lot of different things there that are helping parents connect
Yeah,
to parents,
yeah.
which will, in the long run, hopefully grow what we're all looking for,
Sure.
and that's parents feeling connected to the learning.
Yeah,
Some of that we've
Supporting it.
left up to school, so that's
Yeah.
what we haven't heard of, but we've got folks that are using Bloomsy, we've got folks that are using...
There's all kinds of.
There should be a tool that, and maybe that's what you're developing, that really does kind
Yeah.
of all
one
of
of
it,
the
so
things
that every school
the
has it.
academics that work with
Yeah.
computers,
Right.
there's lots of academic applications, just
Sure.
like you're talking about
Yes.
here. And so,
Yes.
as opposed to at one time, all schools were out getting their own. Well,
Yeah.
we really worked hard working hand in hand with IDs. You said all the curriculum doctors, trying to get those things that are district supported,
Yeah.
because when we need support,
Right.
my school, anyway, something's going to go and they're going to need help. And they go to these guys and go,
Huh?
Well, and
Exactly. No, that's what I
oftentimes
was hopeful
schools.
for and why I'm
So we're
asking the
trying to
question.
get those
Yeah.
things.
And also for training, so that kiddos, or parents and kiddos, everybody can learn the same
Well,
things.
and-
It's also for volunteerism, it's all in
We don't
there.
want these schools to have it.
So that used to be called shadow IT, and people frowned on it, right? So they said, no, we don't want other people doing that. We want you to do the corporate way, right? A lot of your good ideas come from things like that, and so it's not always a bad thing to have that happen. What happens though is that sometimes we look at it and we say, is that something that we can do district-wide, because is it affordable district-wide?
Right.
A school might choose to spend $20 a kid to have that at their school because it's important to them. And they can afford it because they're a charter school and they've got that money to do that. Where if we said, let's scale that up to the district, that'd be $1 million a year. And so when we look at $1 million a year, we have to decide, is that the best thing for that $1 million? And so some of that
I don't
is.
think this is any cost, but I think that it's a very good point, and I was hopeful that it
Yeah.
was the same thing.
Yeah.
And eventually, I think they just got a little ahead of themselves.
And that is good. I mean, we don't have any concerns with that. Actually,
Yeah.
if there are good things that are happening, we want to capitalize on that and figure out how do we replicate that
Sure.
for the district. There are other things that aren't great that happen too, and so those typically
Sure.
die out. So
Yeah.
either way. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
I appreciate it. Back on the bus.